Dr. Richard Pan, and I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join this telephone town hall tonight. I know some of you may be still dialing in, but very much appreciate you joining us. If you have friends or family who are in this town hall and are unable to call in, we will be also posting the recording of this town hall on my website as well. We have some very wonderful guests today, and I know this is a very stressful time for us here in Sacramento. This is the 15th day since the formal shelter-in-place order was made by Sacramento County and then by the governor. Yesterday, Governor Gavin Newsom and state education leaders made it official that schools will not resume in-person instruction for the rest of the academic school year, although the actual decision will be made by each school district. I think many parents assumed that this might be the case, but with the announcement yesterday, the state has provided overarching guidelines to school districts on how to handle remote instruction. And we're going to get into that more a little later on this call. But first, I wanted to introduce our guests for tonight, and again, want to thank them so very much for taking their time to join us on this telephone town hall. We are very fortunate to be joined by Assemblymember Kevin McCarty. Assemblymember McCarty is chair of the Assembly Budget Subcommittee on Education Finance, and he has long been an expert in education and was an advocate for preschool education. And I want to thank you, Senator McCarty, for being on this call. I'm also excited to have Dave Gordon, who's superintendent of the Sacramento County Office of Education, on the call as well. Dave has devoted his career to education, was also a superintendent of the Elk Grove Unified School District in the past, and the leader in the field, not only regionally but statewide as well. And again, thank you, Dave, for joining us. And we are also very fortunate to have Rivka Sass, director of the Sacramento Public Library, on the call. Rivka oversees 28 libraries in the Sacramento area and is nationally recognized for her work to transform libraries into the cornerstone of our community. And I want to again thank Rivka for joining our call tonight. We are going to start with some introductions and then questions that we have received from you, the people in the district. But before we do, I want to remind everyone that if you would like to ask a question of myself or guests, you can send them to me at senator.pan@senate.ca.gov. I said many people have already sent questions in already, and I look forward to addressing those as well. As I mentioned earlier, the call is being posted to my website and my Facebook page. Because of technology limitations, we are capped at 1,200 callers, but for anyone who wishes to listen or share with friends, that can be done on my website, which is sb06.senate.ca.gov. So I want to first start with an update on where we are today with the COVID-19 pandemic. Here in the state of California, we have over 8,000 cases, 8,155 cases, and unfortunately 171 fatalities. Here also locally in Sacramento County, we've had 341 confirmed cases and 9 deaths. Also, we've also have cases in Yolo County as well as many other surrounding counties. Perhaps the good news is, is that California is so far flattening the curve. Earlier actions taken by our state and locally to ask people to stay at home, to practice physical distancing, keeping 6 feet away from each other as much as possible, to frequently wash our hands, are having an impact. The rate of spread and the rate of hospitalization of people in California is slower than many other parts of the country. I think if you've been watching the news, you can see what has happened in New York, particularly in New York City, but also what is happening in other parts of the country as well. For example, New Orleans, Detroit, Chicago, and other states as well. But we can't let up. We have to continue our resolve to continue to physically distance from each other to slow the spread of this disease. Projections are that sometime in late April, early May, we're going to see continuing rise to hopefully peaking at that point in time. Our healthcare systems will be stretched at that time, hopefully, and there's some cautious optimism that if we continue to vigorously keep the distance, that physical distancing, that we will not overwhelm our hospitals and other healthcare facilities like we're seeing happening in New York City right now. So we are all on the front lines of addressing COVID-19, and we each need to do our part to slow the spread of this disease. Now, we also know that there have been tremendous consequences as a result of our efforts to save lives by physically distancing. We know that many businesses have suffered, and we've just had the beginning of the month yesterday. People have had to pay rent or not been unable to pay rent. People have been laid off. Our kids have been home from school for many weeks, and certainly we have worked hard at the local level, at the state, and nationally to try to help people out. But we also understand that people are struggling because of this. And so today's call, we're going to particularly focus on the impact on education. But I do want to point out several recent actions at the state, which have been announced by the governor to try to help people, families, and businesses. So we, in addition to the federal program for small businesses, the state is also providing first-come, first-serve loans to small employers, also who may not qualify for the federal program, also new state initiatives to help support California workers that are impacted by COVID-19, and also creating a platform, onwardcalifornia.org, to help displaced workers with over 70,000 job opportunities in critical industries. In addition, the governor announced an education agreement, which we will delve in a little more later, to try to, again, between teachers, classified employees, school boards, superintendents, and principals to try to work together to provide distance learning and provides a collaboration framework. In addition, the governor has also executed executive orders to try to protect renters and also protect homes and small businesses from things like water shutoffs and other types of actions as well to help families and small businesses. So with that, I again want to thank everyone for participating in this call, and I would like to now pose some questions for my guests to start this off. So let's start with Assemblyman Riccardi. And again, I want to thank you so much for being on this call. I know that you are a father, and you and your wife, you have two daughters at home, and they're school age. So maybe you can share some of your own experiences about how your family is handling them being home from school, having to try to do distance learning, and then perhaps you might add on some of the things that you are working on or with the governor and others to try to help other families as well with distance learning.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Pan, and thanks for coordinating us to talk about these issues in COVID-19. You know, when we talk about the impact, one of the biggest impacts in California, of course, is public health, but right behind there is how this impacts the 6 million school children in California and their learning, and those are some of the top questions that we get, which is why we wanted to have this conversation tonight to we're not going to be here for everybody, but maybe a snapshot of what some of the larger issues are. But Yeah, just to put in perspective, I chair the budget committee overseeing school funding. I serve on the education committee in the assembly, just like you do, Dr. Pan, the Senate. But, I have 2 kids in 5th grade, and we're struggling just like, 50,000 Sac City kids and kids in Elk Grove and Atomas and all across the region. It's just uncharted territories, and we're just doing our best. It's hard to keep our kids focused. They're, cooped up in the house. They want to get out, and, we're trying to give as much structure to them as possible. So what we're doing, which most Sac City families are doing until the 13th of April when they start official online instruction, is doing enrichment, just trying to do the best that we can to give them, a few hours throughout the day of some type of academic opportunity. I know Rivka's going to talk about that from the library perspective, what resources are out there to families. Try to do some science in the morning. We're watching a little KVIE, but I will say, before I get into detail, that really, like most families out there, it's mom who's stepping up and making it happen. So Leticia is has her own job, but she's really the one who's driving this and keeping the girls on task. I try my best, of course. But we do, a little science in the morning. Then they have their online Khan Academy, which have their math homework, which is one thing we did get from the school. And then we do a little bit of reading and try to get out there and do some PE and exercise and walk around the block, walk our dog. But just getting ready to do the online stuff, which starts the 13th of April. And I know a lot of parents are frustrated that why did it take so long? But the reality is, in our district, half of the kids don't have computers, don't have internet access. And so we have this equity and achievement gap, and it wouldn't be fair to start online for everybody when half the kids don't even have literally like the pen and pencil to do their work, which is the technology. So Sac City District is giving out, literally thousands of Chromebooks. It's going to go up to tens of thousands in the next couple of weeks, and they're trying to put together online hotspots and get internet access for families. And we're looking forward to the 13th of April when our school district, like many districts around Sacramento and across the state, will start in earnest this online education. And it's not going to be easy. A lot of parents are going to have challenges, but it's really the best that we could do. And we can't just shut down the schools and say, come back next year. We need to do our best and try to make this online education work.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Riccardi. I, too, am a father. I have 2 kids who are both school age as well, and we're trying to balance the same thing, right? And I want to thank my wife, who has taken a bit of the lead because I've tend to be on a lot of conference calls to try to deal with this outbreak. I understand families are struggling at home, and there's families who even have more difficulties because they may not have access to the internet and other types of things. We're trying to do distance learning. Superintendent Gordon, thank you so very much for being here and joining this call as well. I thought I'd ask you what you foresee as the impact of the governor's announcement yesterday about that we, and the superintendent of public instruction, that we probably aren't going to be able to have kids return to school for this school year, for the remainder of the year, and also the guidelines that were announced as well, the collaborative guideline for distance learning. So what's your take on that, and how we're going to move forward for the remainder of the school year?
Sure. The 13 districts in the county will have a statement on the closure issue tomorrow. But I think we're looking at distance learning for probably the rest of the year. And districts are working hard. The districts are all different. We have to keep in mind that we don't just have urban districts in Sacramento. We have districts with 250 students and rural districts as well. They're all working hard to push out remote learning and distance learning. Some of them will be doing it in different ways, but they're all working very, very hard to get it out just as soon as possible. Next week is the spring break for most of our districts, so they will be using that time to ramp up their capacity push out the distance learning. All of them have been distributing devices, usually Chromebooks. Many of them are distributing hotspots for connectivity. One of the things I wanted to mention is that we're going to be asking the governor and others of our leaders to see if there's a way to expedite connectivity by asking our internet providers just to make the internet service free for the next 90 days, so you don't have to go through getting this particular hotspot or finding connections where they may not be with your service provider. Anyway, that's one approach, and districts will be continuing to try to find every child who needs access in order to be able to receive the curriculum, because equity of access is a very, very important principle which all of us are trying very, very hard to follow.
Well, thank you. Thanks very much. Actually, just want to just quickly return to Senator McCarty. Did you want to add anything more to that from a state perspective in terms of the governor's announcements?
Yeah, as far as the online education, you know, I talked today with 6 of our local superintendents, and we figure that the biggest issue that we're trying to work on is connectivity to the internet. And we know that there's enough resources to get Chromebooks, and they're being donated. So it's really making sure they have access, because even if people get the hotspots, they aren't necessarily reliable. So we need to try to find a longer-term solution there. And we realize, too, that it's not just through the school year. This may be through summer instruction as well. It's not mandatory yet, but some districts are thinking about how we could have summer instruction to make sure that we deal with this learning loss that we've suffered, and you know, some students face it in the first place as well. So we're going to be looking at those issues, how we can focus on technology and resources to go throughout the school year and potentially into the summer as well.
Great. And Rivka, thank you so much for joining us on the call. And I understand that you had your own personal harrowing travel experience trying to get home after the coronavirus travel ban was put in place several weeks ago. So really glad to have you here and home safe. Libraries are really such a great resource that enhances and fills gaps for learning. We often talk about our schools being sort of the formal process of education, and our libraries is the self-driven education opportunity that we provide for our constituents and the people of our region. Maybe can you share what our libraries are doing now to support distance learning and to provide resources for learning right now? What kind of enrichment activities are going on through the libraries?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that, and I'm really thrilled to be part of this call. You know, the point about the digital divide is so important, and one thing that we can offer, of course, is our virtual resources or our online resources, but that doesn't do people a lot of good if they don't have either internet access or computers at home, something that libraries provide all the time. And you know, when we are in our physical spaces, but right now we've really delved into and jumped in with both feet in terms of virtual programming. So we have live programs including story times, reading recommendations. This week we want to make sure that kids are keeping up with their reading activities. You know, we all know that there's a tremendous reading gap for children, and so we've launched something called Spring Into Reading so that kids can log their reading and keep up. And we will also be launching a virtual summer reading program around the 1st of May to keep kids reading during the summer and prevent that summer slide and keep that going on. But right now, the resource that I want to talk about most will help all the parents who are struggling with helping their kids with homework during this time of distance learning. And that is that the library has a live homework help available every day from 1 p.m. to 11 p.m. It's called Homework Help Now, and you can get an instant library card. All of the kids who go to either Sac City Unified, Twin Rivers Unified, San Juan, and we're just bringing up the Center School District, we hope, very soon. So all of the kids and Galt Union High School also, so throughout our community, have student success cards. They have e-cards, basically, for library services. They can check out ebooks. We have more than 200,000 ebook titles, many of them of interest to kids and students. We have a lot of resources to help kids with their homework. So those are all available at the library's website, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions. We can also do tutorials for people on Facebook or Zoom. We're becoming really adept at doing programming that way, but we just want to make sure that we're supporting everyone. And one of the ways we're doing that, again, even if you just have a phone, you can get a card instantly. We provide something called an instant digital card, and we're very proud of that. We were one of the first libraries in the country to offer that service. And all you have to do is go to saclibrary.org, and right on the front page of the library it says Need a Library Card. Now is a great time to sign up and get instant access to ebooks, streaming movies, and more.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so very much, Rivka, for that. So we're now going to move to questions from our listeners. We actually have quite a few questions. We're probably unfortunately not able to get to all of them. I think my staff will try to get back to individual people with questions if we don't actually get to them during this telephone town hall. But let me go ahead and get started and see how many we can get through. First, quick question from Judith, which isn't strictly about education, but she was asking, is it okay or safe to get in your vehicle alone and go for a short ride if you don't get out of the car and interact with anyone to help relieve cabin fever? So we heard, Kevin, you talked about, and I certainly had that experience, like, okay, we're all holed up at home. That's what we should be doing. But what about getting out a little bit? I guess the answer is that this is about physical distancing. So we're not saying people can't leave their homes. But if you're going out, it is really important that you stay physically away from people, ideally at least 6 feet or greater. So unfortunately, we've had problems where, for example, we have a lot of people bring their kids to a playground and the kids are running into each other and so forth. So in order to try to slow the spread of the disease, they've had to close the playgrounds, or the governor has closed parking lots related to parks and so forth. It really is about keeping that distance and being sure we slow the spread of this disease. And so we're not saying you can't go outside, but if you do go outside, don't get closer than 6 feet to anyone else. We do need to space out, and if you see too many people in an area, then you should stay away from that area. But it is about not interacting with people physically in that way. I don't know if anyone else on the call wanted to add on to that, or we'll move on to the next question. Okay, hearing nothing, let's move on to the next question. So there are actually 3 questions I'm going to group together. So we have Sarah who asked, how are you planning to address the following concerns: internet access, and particularly around caps, data caps, because many people have data caps on their internet, and they're also using the internet for other very important things like paying their bills and other types of activities. And so what are we going to do about data caps? And then what about getting devices for kids as well? Lola asked, many children do not have access to computers or the internet. What's being done to bridge the digital divide at this time? And Kim did ask why Sac City Unified School District hasn't purchased computers for students, although actually they have, and perhaps Superintendent Gordon might have a little more information about that, although I know you're representing the county. So maybe what we'll do is, actually, Superintendent Gordon, do you want to take a first crack at answering these questions, and then maybe Assemblymember McCarty can follow up on that as well?
Yeah, sure. On the cost of the data, there really isn't an answer. There really isn't an answer for that unless the providers are willing to give everybody a break for 3 months as this goes on. That's one of the things that we're asking. But the schools don't have a way to reimburse people's individual expenses for their connectivity. In terms of the devices, most of the districts are providing some sort of device, usually these Chromebooks, and as we speak, a number of the districts are having pickup sessions where people will drive by and pick up the devices. So that is going on. And Senator Pan is correct. The Sacramento Unified District has identified funds and has placed an order for some thousands of Chromebooks, and they're waiting on delivery of those right now.
I'll just jump in, Dr. Pan. I'm, as you know, a parent of Sac City, and I'm looking at the email right here from our superintendent at 4 o'clock. So tomorrow at about 15 sites across Sac City, they're starting to give out those computers. And just for perspective, I spoke to a bunch of school superintendents today and came to the conclusion that computers is not the problem. The lack of devices is not the problem. It's internet access. In the Elk Grove district, for example, they have 50,000 computers for their classrooms that they've brought back in. They're fixing them up, getting the right software, and getting them all ready to go. And they'll be using those devices to give to families. So plenty of devices. It's really the internet access, and I think Superintendent Gordon brought up, which is really, I think, what we should be trying to do across the state is and this addresses the question about people's data plans. If we have some type of arrangement with our providers to have, basic internet for 90 days, something like that, I think that's what we really should be trying to accomplish.
Oh, thank you. And I know there are efforts both at the statewide, and I think there's some conversations locally with various internet providers to try to address some of these issues like data caps. So certainly, hopefully we can try to get more information about where we are with some of those conversations. But we do recognize that's a challenge for many families. Many don't have internet at all. So we talked about hotspots a little earlier, and also the question about reliability of those hotspots, and then the ones who have internet but may have data caps, what we try to do there. So certainly things to work on. Okay.
Dr. Pan,
yes,
one more thing about technology I think is important is a lot of parents, when they first got the call saying, hey, do you have a computer at home? They said yes. But now these parents are working from home. So that's a challenge as well, is that maybe they have a computer, but they need to be on it for a work conference call. So many of the districts are doing a round 2, recognizing that, so they will be working with families to give out additional Chromebooks as needed.
Yeah. So, and I appreciate that the schools are working hard to reach out, but they also need you to respond, the families to respond to their questionnaires or phone calls about this, so we can get an accurate assessment of what kind of equipment and needs we have. Great. So I'm going to move on to the next set of questions. So Maxine asked, does the library have traveling books? And John asked, I want to confirm that the library will waive fines for Link Plus items that can't be returned because drop slots and branches are closed. So Rivka, it sounds like a perfect question for you to try to answer. Maybe you can also touch on whether the library has any resources for families as well related to the internet. I know that's a common place people go to, but now that we're physically closed, whether there's any alternatives from the library's perspective.
Right. Oh, thank you. So first I want to assure anybody who's listening about any type of fines at all, they're all waived. When this is over and you can bring your Link Plus items back, we will happily take them. And in fact, we appreciate that very much. But all library loans have been extended through early June at this point. Everybody's card from the last year has, that may have expired has been renewed. So we want to make it as easy as possible to use the virtual library. Our real desire and frustration, though, is how do we get physical books into everybody's hands? Because we know we have some users who don't have devices, who can't read ebooks, and we're still working on that because we have to keep it. We want it to be safe, so we're working on that. And I don't have any news to share other than we really want to be able to implement some sort of, re-implement some sort of mobile services for people and be able to get physical books in some people's hands. In terms of the internet, all Sacramento public libraries have 1 gig internet speed. We are really fast. The problem is figuring out a way to boost that signal so that it goes a little bit farther than just in the immediate vicinity of the library. So that's a challenge that we'll put out there because we'd love to see that happen because our libraries are strategically placed. And if we could boost our internet signals, I think that would help a lot of families immediately with getting online. So I think that's something that we all need to discuss and see how we can solve so that kids have access. I want to mention something that I forgot to mention, if it's okay, and that is one of the things, we're all sheltering in place. It is so important that kids also, in addition to all of the, I call it free-range learning that they need to experience kind of through the library, whether it's virtually, they need to have time to play. So make sure that part of what kids are getting are those fun activities. I loved hearing about the STEM activities that Assemblymember McCarty's doing with his kids and those kinds of things. School is important. Play is also incredibly important for kids because it keeps them healthy and allows them to really be engaged with learning. So I had to get that plug in. But no library fines, easy access to library cards, and we will do all we can to boost our internet signals to make sure that people get as much access as they can.
Great, thank you. So the next set of questions I've held together is Christopher asked, are students going to be held back from the next grade? And Sharon asked, will English as second learner and or special education students and the general population be promoted to the next grade if they are not proficient in their subject? So I think this is probably a common concern that, well, what standard by which we are going to advance our students, the wide range of students that we have, or are we just going to move them along and try to catch them up next year? So are we going to be moving our students to the next grade, and what standards are going to be used to decide whether they should advance to the next grade? So I guess, Lieutenant Gordon, perhaps you should take this one on first.
Sure. Well, obviously, those decisions will be in the hands of the teachers and the school people at each individual district. But I will say the strong feeling is that students should be given the strongest benefit of the doubt because none of these circumstances were their fault or our fault or really anybody's fault. And these are very difficult times, very difficult circumstances, loads of stress on families and on our young people. And I think that's the spirit in which a lot of the grading and the granting of credit and the promotions will be taken. With respect to serving our limited English speaking students, our second language learners, and our special education students particularly, those are very, very tough issues in the best of times and in the best of circumstances. And I know the staff in my office, we serve a number of special education students, and in all of the districts are working very hard do the best possible job for those students given the limitations that we're having to work under in a distance learning, remote learning format. So I think if you have specific questions about those issues, please contact your individual school districts. And their websites would have information on exactly whom you would contact.
All right, great. Anyone else want to weigh in on this? Okay, so certainly that is a school, but certainly I appreciate that the school districts are being urged to recognize the unique circumstance and give students as much of the benefit as doubt as possible. So following that,
Dr. Pan, let me just jump in there real quick.
Of course.
Well, first, kids are resilient, and I think that's important to note, and you note that as a pediatrician all the time, is that I have total confidence our kids are going to bounce back from this. And if you think about if everybody goes ahead, they're all as a cohort a little behind. And so assuming we get back to the new normal this summer and fall, that I'm confident that schools will be able to have students catch up in the next grade. That being said, I was comforted today hearing from Superintendent Thomas Evans was saying that if you think about it, if you think about all the time that's lost on testing and end of the year parties, field trips and so forth, they're confident that going back at it after the spring break, so mid-April, with this online instruction, that they could really make up the end of the year for what we've lost the last few weeks. And so I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to not have a tremendous learning loss for our students, and they can continue on to the next grade.
Okay, great. So let me, the next pair of questions here is, Larry asked, why aren't we delaying school into the summer, right? We're closed now, but why not just move the school year out? And Bart asked, what are the plans for summer school and the next school year? And let me just put these questions in a little bit of context from the sort of the health, public health point of view. I mentioned earlier that we're expecting the sort of the bump that we have to get through is being perhaps late April, early mid-May. Hopefully by the time we get into the summer, things are better under control. Maybe we have the opportunity in the summer, depending, we still don't know about this virus, this particular type of coronavirus, but coronaviruses generally tend to not spread as much in the summer with the heat and the humidity. I know we're dry heat here in Sacramento, but maybe if we're lucky, the virus will diminish a bit over the summer. So why not just move school out into the summer in exchange for the fact that we're closed now? And then what about next fall, though? Where are we going to start next fall? Actually, Senator McCarty, did you want to open up on this one, followed by Superintendent Gordon?
Yeah. So
okay.
it's definitely something that we should think about, is summer instruction, whether everything turns out good, we can get back at school, or we can actually have in-person summer instruction, or online summer instruction. Certainly, we don't always budget that. Teachers, they don't compensated during the summer, and so we have to figure out how to do that. As part of my position overseeing the education budget for California in the legislature and the assembly, we're looking at putting a proposal forward to putting out a block grant to school districts to look at just this. It should be a local decision. I'm not sure we're going to have a state mandate. I know that Sac City over the past few years has had, for example, students who are a little bit behind going into third grade. They automatically enroll students in summer, and then the parents can unenroll them. So it's kind of an opt-out type thing, maybe something like that. But it's definitely something that we are considering going forward. The question is an interesting one. The first question the fellow asked, as far as, well, why not just call this summer right now, because we're not in school, and I think you can't unring the bell on that, and I think it's smart what we're doing is getting these online distance learning efforts going in the next couple weeks.
Superintendent Gordon.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add other than the summer school could be possible if there was assurance that it would be funded and there was sufficient notice to allow schools to plan it. And then of course, if we're blessed to have relief from the virus by that time, to be able to open programs in the summer, I think the schools could certainly do it.
And I know summer is a busy time for the libraries. We often have summer reading programs and so forth. Again, I know we just tried to answer this question about summer school. Director Sass, any thoughts from your perspective on summer?
Sorry, I was muted. I want to make sure, actually, we're sort of planning for the worst but hoping for the best. And we're planning meal service again. Last summer, libraries served meals in more than 13 or 17 sites, something like that. So definitely meals. We served about 23,000, I believe, over the course of the summer. So we're planning meals. Summer reading is going on as planned, even if it's virtual. We're going to figure out ways to do that. We've got some great support for that this summer. And, we want to we're librarians, so we're not, I'm not an educator. I'm a librarian. There's a difference. I don't ever claim to be one. But honestly, learning goes on all year round, and we want to make sure that kids are getting the fundamentals, including those reading skills. So we will do everything we can to support the work of our educators and make sure that kids have access to everything that they need. We're here to support families. Our big push is the 0 to 5. Early learning is, that's the library's jam, if you will, and we want to make sure that families know that, especially when it comes to very young children, we're here for you. We have all kinds of activities planned, whether, again, in person or virtually. We want kids to grow up loving to read, because if they love to read, they will love to learn, and that's what it's all about. And we're here to support parents and make sure that they understand their child's first teachers. So we just want to be your community partner.
Great. And actually, I have a library question now. So Somia asked, would it be possible for college libraries to acquire e-books or Kindle versions for some of their catalog, and then perhaps share that with the local library, so people are interested in greater access to e-books through the library? And then also, I think it's Asias asked about basically that many books have holds that translate into waiting times for more than 10 weeks. Is there any discussion about increasing the number of e-books available given the anticipated spike in library access?
Actually, those are great questions. Now, I can't really answer the first question if it's about academic titles. Our ebook collections are very, while they're definitely classics, and if you go online, you will find a huge range of classic titles available. But I can ask the question of our colleagues at Sac State, and if somebody wants to reach out to me directly, my email address is rsass@saclibrary.org. So just reach out to me, and I'll see what I can do about finding the answer. But in terms of ebook titles, we are ordering more. We just did a very large order of titles in Spanish for people who want to read their titles in Spanish. We are adding new titles all the time, and Hoopla, which is one of our ebook suppliers, there's no waiting for a Hoopla title, and they've just added, I think, about 1,000 new titles, again, to encourage people to use us digitally. I like to say, save your Amazon Audible money for other purposes and make use of the library right now. and we will continue to add new ebook titles every week. We have our librarians are ordering new titles literally every day. So we will try to keep you all engaged with reading.
Fantastic. Misty asked, what kind of food and resources are available for constituents? And I appreciate she asked about food because, as Rivka mentioned, the libraries have participated in our efforts, our Million Meal efforts to get kids food in the summer. But we know kids need food today, and they've been getting it through the schools. So what kind of, let's talk about food and food distribution for both students and also for perhaps for a broader community. And one of the things I want to mention, first of all, is that people are getting food distributed through the school districts, but we're also working to get food to seniors. In Elk Grove, we have volunteers distributing food through the Elk Grove Senior Center. Many of our restaurants who've been closed are only doing takeout have also stepped up. Restaurants like Mulvaney's, Alora, Cannon, Camden, Binoyachi, they're preparing foods for seniors in our area as well. We have people working to try to get, our Sacramento Food Bank, and in fact, the National Guard was called in to help distribute, because that's one of the problems is, many of the volunteers are seniors who are at risk, so we've tried to get in more folks to help. That's not only about getting the food, it's also distributing it out to people and households as well. So that's something we're working very hard in. I think the Conservation Corps is being engaged in that as well. So in terms of trying to get food, we recognize that not only do people have to learn, our kids and others, we also need to help get them fed as well. Senator McCarty, I tried to cover some of that ground. Did you want to add to that in terms of getting food to people in our community?
No, you said it, just that some of our families, schools is how the kids eat. They get 3 meals a day sometimes, and it's hard to fathom. Many of us are very fortunate. I certainly am, but some of our families are not. So we need to make sure that we keep at it. And then, in addition, the question wasn't about students. I think the question about food in general. So, the food banks are certainly a huge resource. So they are running low on their supplies and resources, so they're asking for donations of cash. So if anybody wants to find a place to help out, donating to your local food bank is a great place.
Superintendent Gordon, did you have anything else to add to that?
No, just that the schools, on the phone call Assemblyman McCarty had today, just 3 of our districts were collectively handing out about 30,000 meals a day, and that's only 3 of our districts. And but I would really echo what Assemblyman McCarty said. The nonprofits, the food banks are really struggling. So any of you out there listening, if you can make a donation to them, it's badly needed.
Yeah, no, I agree. So thank you. Next question from Rebecca. The concern I have is for children with special needs, including those who may not have had a full diagnosis. And she asked if daycare providers can have 10 or less, can schools operate with 10 or less students. So many of our children with special needs, they often require, it's hard to do distance learning services, things like physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, etc. Some of it may be able to be done online. So are there discussions about being able to provide special ed services that have to be delivered in person to still be able to do that at school sites? Or what's the conversation about special ed services? Superintendent Gordon, do you want to try to take that one on?
Well, as I said earlier, it's a very, very difficult issue because, as you said, a lot of the services that our families with special needs depend upon are in-person kinds of services, and that's a very difficult thing to engineer now. The child care that's being provided is not for students with special needs typically, and it's for the first responders and the people working in the critical health care system. So we in the districts are working as hard as we can to figure out ways to support families as best we can given the limitations. I know our special ed teachers have been on the phone from day one with their families. No one instructed them to do it. It's their work, it's their calling, and we're trying to put together the best substitute possible for the services that people have been used to getting.
Great. Anyone else want to weigh in on this one? Okay. Well, let's move on to the next question. I actually have three questions, all related to actually graduation. So Margaret asked, could you provide some official reassurance that students will still be able to graduate from high school? And Deborah asked, what is the plan for high school seniors scheduled to graduate with their class this year? And Angelina, what are plans for graduation ceremonies? And Deborah also, part of her question did include graduation ceremonies. So I know we don't want to bring people back together physically, so that's going to be a challenge in terms of any in-person ceremony, because we don't want a fresh outbreak of this disease. We need to continue our physical distancing. But Superintendent Gordon, do you want to first take this one on, and perhaps Senator McCarty might have comments as well about graduation?
Yes, sure. There will be nothing in the way of students graduating. They will have their distance learning instruction and classes the rest of this school year, and they will be able to earn their credits and get their diplomas. No question there. The ceremonies, as Dr. Pan mentioned, is a whole different story, and that's solely a health issue, and whatever is possible will be possible, but what's not possible. I have a granddaughter who's graduating college, and that's not happening as a ceremony in a stadium. I'll also mention that for this year's juniors in high school, this is the year typically that juniors would take their SATs in anticipation of the college application deadlines. The UC CSU deadlines are the end of November of this year, and the CSU and the UC systems have waived the requirement for students to have to submit the SAT scores with their applications. So that pressure will be off, because the SAT was not given in May. It is not likely to be given in June. It's not clear when it could be given again anyway. So the universities are doing a very fine job of working to make accommodations.
Senator McCarty, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think Dave Gordon brought that up, and so that's for seniors and for juniors as well as the SAT. And then for the AP exam, they're going to be looking at opportunities for people to take those at home. So we are very mindful about that. We don't want to stop our college dreams, and more importantly, our economy and our workforce. We need more college graduates. We need people to be going on to college, and so that's something that we need to make sure we address.
Okay, great. Next question, Steve asked, given the seriousness of COVID-19, isn't this a good time to add influenza to the required vaccines in public schools? Well, I guess I'll take that one on. So first of all, any vaccines required for school enrollment either has to be passed by the legislature, or it could be decided by the Department of Public Health. I don't see any move to do that, although I would point out that if COVID comes back next fall, we need to try to be sure we, first of all, maximize our hospital capacity, and hopefully we are going to be more ready by next fall than we were before in terms of capacity. But certainly to minimize other diseases that can mimic or appear like COVID-19 would be very important. So, so getting more people immunized against flu would be very helpful. In fact, that's why when COVID-19 was first starting, there was an urgency to asking people to get vaccinated against the flu to try to reduce the hospitalizations and the number of people who could get the flu as well. So I don't see us adding that as a required vaccine for public schools, but certainly would urge people to next fall to get themselves vaccinated against the flu, especially in the face of the possible reemergence of the coronavirus. I don't know if anyone else wanted to add on to that. Okay, we'll move on then. Austin asked, with the most recent announcement of Governor Newsom projecting a peak of COVID hospitalizations in essentially May, and schools remaining closed for the rest of the academic year through June, how will this impact the stay-in-place and social distancing guidelines for other businesses? So aside from the school, for everyone else, what is our path forward? What I would say is that right now we need to persist in our physical distancing. So far, as I mentioned in the introduction, we have actually been relatively successful in slowing the spread of this pandemic compared to some other parts of the world like Italy and Spain, in comparison to some other parts of our own country like New York City right now. Detroit, Chicago, New Orleans are on a much more rapid rise, other parts of the country. But we will only continue this if we continue or we're persistent in our efforts, and that in doing the physical distancing. And if we lift that too early, we will be on a much more rapid rise. It's projected that we will probably stretch, but hopefully not exceed the capacity of our healthcare system if we continue to have the resolve to continue to do our physical distancing and slow that spread, and perhaps even work even harder to make that happen. But I think in terms of when we will find some relief, that probably won't come until we can greatly increase our ability to test people, so we can better identify who currently has the disease, who may have recovered and hopefully will be immune to the disease, and who still could potentially catch the disease. And so to be able to test on a much wider scale than we're able to right now, hopefully will give us the ability to then potentially lift some of the restrictions that we have when we look to Asia and what they've been able to do in places like Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore, and other parts, which involves very frequent testing, community surveillance, combined with the fact that people who are identified to have the infection to be quarantined or isolated, that has been successful in reducing the spread and still allowing schools to continue and other types of business activity to continue. But we first need to get through, I think, the next couple of months, and hopefully in that time as well, we will have greater action at the federal level to ensure we have a good supply chain for not only testing but personal protective equipment supplies, which we are lagging in, and that we will then gain that capacity to allow us to shift into a mode where we are able to better identify who's still at risk and who is still infectious, and therefore be able to better manage this. But we will have to wait and see where things are with that. I think at this time it is past 7 o'clock, so we are toward the end of our time, but I would like to ask each of my guests to perhaps make a closing remark and maybe share some words of hope with the listeners. Senator McCarty, do you want to lead this off and perhaps share with our listeners what are some of the things that you would like them to take away from today's town hall?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks, Dr. Pan, for coordinating this, and I hope to do it again on these topics. I think there's so much need out there for information. I know we have nearly 1,000 people who signed up for this call tonight, so I hope it was beneficial. Look, we don't have all the answers. We're going through this just like everybody else is, and even Dr. Pan and I have 2 kids in school, so we're families going through this. But I'm confident. I'm super proud of our administrators, teachers, classified workers who are stepping up to the plate as educators and making sure that we focus on the education of our future, our kids here in the Sacramento area. So I'm very hopeful. I know there's going to be some challenges, and I encourage you to keep reaching out to us, emailing us, thinking about things that we are missing. Some of those issues were addressed today as far as technology and access, internet, how we deal with students with disabilities and food insecurity and childcare. And so these are ongoing issues that we're working at. We will go back in the legislature in the next probably month and a half to vote on a budget, kind of an interim budget to keep our schools whole, and we will have an opportunity to potentially look at doing some adjustments and changes dealing with summer instruction or other issues. So this is an ongoing and moving target that we're working at. So rest assured that that I'm looking at all these issues and taking feedback from people like you tonight who participated. So thanks again, Dr. Pan, and thanks Dave Gordon and Rivka Sass for joining us as well.
No, thank you very much, Senator McCarty, and I want to thank you for your leadership as well at the state, and particularly in the realm of education, but in many other areas as well. And so I really appreciate you joining this call and sharing your knowledge and expertise. And I know that we're going to be working together at the state to try to help out our school kids and everyone else, or businesses or families here in our community. Superintendent Gordon, what do you want to? Can you share with us a good positive closing note?
Well, first I want to thank the 2 of you, Senator Pan, Assemblyman McCarty, for being true leaders here, not just in the legislature, but here in the community. Your leadership is much appreciated. I also want to echo what Assemblyman McCarty said. Our kids are resilient. Our families are resilient. Sacramento is a resilient community, and a lot of it is because we stick together and we work together. And these are tough times, but we will get through it. I agree that our school people are working so very hard to push out the best possible instruction. We will get through this, so everybody stay strong, stay well, take care of your families, and we'll get through this, and we'll come out stronger on the other end.
Right. And thank you. And I also want to thank you, Superintendent Gordon, for your leadership. I know that I've been able to see firsthand your work with our superintendents in our area, and really appreciate everyone in the education community coming together to work together to try to share resources, really try to be sure that all the kids in our community are able to get learning as much as we can in these difficult times. So thank you so much for your leadership in making that happen. Library Director Rivka, thank you so very much. What would you like to share with us?
Well, I just want to thank all of you, and I have to say, I want to thank our region, our community, Sacramento. We are, when you think about how many people there are in the state of California, what a great job everyone is doing, as hard as this is. I'm really proud to call myself a Californian, and I'm really proud to call myself a Sacramentan. And I just appreciate everything that all of you said tonight on the call. I appreciated the questions and the fact that people are engaged enough to call in and, just know that we're all doing the best we can, and we really want to do this for our community. And I wish I could open the doors of the library tomorrow, and I know we can't because we have to do what's best for all of us to stay safe and healthy. But we'll be back, and in the meantime, we will do everything we can to support our children and our parents and our families, and let us know what else we can be doing, because we want to do it. We want to be there for you. Thank you.
Fantastic. So first of all, I want to thank all my guests, Senator McCarty, Superintendent Gordon, Director Rivka, for being very gracious with your time. I also want to thank all the people who called in to listen to this telephone town hall. This is a tough situation for all of us. This is a global pandemic here in Sacramento. I want to echo what Director Rivka said. I'm so very proud of the people of Sacramento who have really stepped up. When you look at what's going on here in Sacramento, we had the very first case of community spread hospitalized here in Sacramento at UC Davis, someone who got ill in Northern California. So we were the first place to have this happen in the country, yet we see that our community so far, and we are, I know people are struggling, that we are still doing better than many other areas where they were exposed, where they had their first cases much later than we did, and we certainly want to pour our hearts out to people in those other parts of the country, and hope that things get better for them very soon. We are coming together as a community to try to be sure that our community stays as safe as possible, and that we help each other out. And I do want to share some examples. We talked earlier about all the people coming together to share food in Elk Grove, at the Elk Grove Senior Center, our Sacramento restaurants. Sacramento Kings have stepped up by donating food to our food banks and using their platform to distribute information. We also want to mention that the Hacker Lab, Repcord, a 3D printing company, and the Sierra Sacramento Valley Medical Site and others are partnering to build 12,000 face shields for our frontline medical staff to address shortages of personal protective equipment. And they are looking for volunteers to help with the effort who have people have 3D printing experiences or no experience, so all can volunteer by emailing COVID19 at hackerlab.org. The governor called for medical professionals to help out with the new health corps, and in 24 hours got over 25,000 medical professionals to step up. The Asian Pacific Environmental Network is leading a volunteer phone banking effort to connect local communities and resources. Many other people are, again, coming together to try to help each other out. So each one of us can make a difference. We can get through this if we continue to come together and, unfortunately, literally stay physically apart, but we can socially still connect with each other. So let's come together, work together. We have been doing that. Let's keep doing that. Certainly, we are resolved to do that. I want to remind you that you can listen to this call on our website or Facebook. Also, we're going to have on the site informational links that you can access for help as well. And we want to continue to have these conversations as long as they're helpful. And I do have to make one final comment because yesterday was Census Day. Please fill out your census as well, because what federal resources we get back is often dependent on how many people that are counted in the census. So I know everyone's busy with a lot of other things. Let's also be sure we turn in our census form. It's fast, it's easy, it's confidential. I think I did my family's in like 5 minutes. So just take a moment out. If you have access online, you can do it online at www.2020census.gov and fill out your census as well. And so again, I want to thank everyone for participating in this telephone town hall, and again, want to thank Assemblymember McCarty, Superintendent Gordon, Director Rivka. Thanks so much for joining me and for sharing your knowledge and expertise. And I want to look forward to seeing you. And please, everyone, be safe, be healthy. Thank you so much for participating.